Now, A Nightmare on Elm Street was my first horror ever. Someone associated to my friend had the box set, and they came to me in school and suggested to check it out, as they had seen the movies and told me all about the villainous Freddy Krueger. It took me a while after catching sight of him, as I found him generally unnerving to look at, and so today I want to go over a brief look at the series. Mostly I'll be looking at some of the better entries seriously, laughing at the middle of the pack entries, and clowning the horrid. Now, without further ado, let's get into the retrospective. Now, the first movie is without a doubt the best movie of the franchise in my opinion, directed by the late and great Wes Craven, who has done other works such as Scream, Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Swamp Thing, Hills Have Eyes Part 2, Scream 2, 3 and 4, Red Eye, and just a bunch of other stuff that is all legendary. So yeah, he's had a very good career and is always going to be looked fondly at as a legend. Now, the film was made and distributed by New Line Cinema. The head honcho at the time, Robert Shaye, also distributed other great works such as Lord of the Rings and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This film was made on a budget of 1.1 million and grossed 57 million, so fair to say it was pretty successful. The film was made on the premise of struggling to define distinction between reality and dreams after Wes heard about some, and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation here, Hmong villagers who had disturbing dreams, refusing to sleep, and eventually some of them died during their sleep. Crazy to think that one of the most inconceivable horror villains, among the likes of Pinhead, has a real life basis. Now, obviously, Freddy didn't kill them.
Are you sure about that?
Jokes aside though, bit mental how real life events shaped the movie. The song Dreamweaver solidified the movie for Wes, giving an artistic concept / setting to bounce ideas from, as well as give an idea from where the synth from the intro comes from. Other than these, we can also see religion being a big part of the movie, with several bases from Nancy holding the cross for prayer and the concepts to the nightmares and Freddy's abilities linking to more Eastern inspired ideas. Now, enough about Wes and background information for now. Let's discuss the movie and the actors in it, with some recognisable faces such as Johnny Depp in his first movie role. Scratch that, his first role ever. Pretty interesting start for Mr. Depp, fair to say. Then next we have horror icon John Saxon, most recognisable as the cop in, well, pretty much any notable cop character from the 70s and some of the 60s. Most notably is probably Black Christmas. And the main role is Heather Langenkamp, who is mostly known for her role in this film. However, she has been in other movies, notably the best Hellraiser since Bloodlines and Hellraiser Judgment, Truth or Dare, and The Butterfly Room. And finally, the main man and centrepiece of this franchise, Robert, could have been Han Solo, and according to him, Mark Hamill was sleeping on his couch when he learned of this role, but Hamill tells it differently, but who knows or cares really. All we know that Robert is a horror icon of the highest calibre and is in quite a bunch of films that probably you will recognise, such as Galaxy of Terror, Tobe Hooper's Night Terrors, Dance Macabre, Urban Legend, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, 2001 Maniacs, Red, and funnily enough, one version of Phantom of the Opera, which did suck. Now, the film is pretty much a standard slasher flick by nowadays. but the creative ways that they went about getting kills and using reality and dreams was ahead of the curve, though nothing story-wise is too out of pocket, especially with Craven's works and the depiction of family life that he likes to use abusive systems. Though this isn't nearly as bad as the situation in The Hills Have Eyes. Now, we start off in a dream sequence of Tina, who gets frightened by her nightmares of Freddy, which leads to her friend staying the night. We learn that they all have been having similar dreams of the same man, and eventually Rod scares the group and goes with Tina to get his hole. Glenn being mopey because he isn't getting his hole, and Nancy praying to the Lord, is a rather sort of calm before the storm, before everyone thinks Rod kills Tina in one of the most classic kills from this series. We begin to learn more about the lore behind Freddy as the body count slowly rises, with Rod's death being ruled a suicide, and we learn that he can affect outside of the dream and inside too. Well, I say him, it's more how the dream world works, I should say. But it all culminates in an epic finale. Seriously, Nancy is probably one of, if not the dopest old gen Scream Queens, being unflinching in her drive to best Freddy and fight him head on. This series boasts some of the best kills and best practical kills. The highlight of this film being Glenn's death scene, because my god, is it awesome. The worst part of this movie is the ending, because let's be honest, the effects for the scene suck and there is no real excuse. According to the movies that made us, the wrong ending was used and there was some sort of fighting, and whilst that can be true for the cinematic or theatrical release, I don't see why they didn't just re-edit one of the other endings in when they were releasing it as VHS. God, this makes me feel old. Remember VHS? Overall, the original left too little space to be beaten as the best of the franchise. Its haunting soundtrack, ahead of the time kills, and cast chemistry is great, leaving a great experience watching it. I'd give a solid 8 out of 10. If they used No One Dies ending, I'd probably rate it higher. Now, moving on to a more controversial take. The second movie is one of the better movies and in the top 4 in my opinion. Please put your pitchforks away, please. Yes! This movie is very flawed, and yes, it is stupid a lot of the times, but it's also one of the funnest movies in the series without being really bad in my opinion. Directed by Jack Sholder, who took the film because he realised that it could make him big, went on to direct The Hidden, Wishmaster 2 and Arachnid. So it didn't really pan out too well for him. The movie is famous for its widely regarded homoerotic subtones and for the strain it had on the lead actor and Scream King Mark Patton, who was closeted at the time. I'm just going to leave that in because that's funny. But with this role and a few others where he acted as a gay teen, he became typecasted for something he wanted to remain a secret and felt betrayed as the producers and other staff all knew that he was closeted. David Chaskin had denied this homoerotic subtext for years, but has reached out to apologise over the years to limited results. All I'm going to say is, for a movie that is supposedly not homoerotic, it certainly has many pointers to the opposite claim. It was made on $3 million and made $30 million, which is a respectable amount, as it is literally tenfold. Now, as previously mentioned, Mark Patton was the main actor. He was also one of the actors that had auditioned for Glenn in the first film before being beaten out by Johnny Depp, and his previous casting attempt is what made him get this role. He is most known for this role and Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean. He later left acting due to the treatment from Hollywood about his sexuality and dealing with the typecasting, which is honestly a hard situation and sucks for him. The lead actress was Kim Mears, who is mostly known for this role and appearing in Hellraiser Bloodlines, with Robert Englund returning to play Freddy in one of his darker portrayals that won't be coming back until New Nightmare. Is something that will be missed, even if he becomes more iconic down the line. With his cheesy one-liners, something that I do miss from the earlier films is his darker and bleak sense of humour that only he finds funny. The movie plot is admittedly not as interesting as the first movie. Jesse and his family move into Nancy's old house, only to get stalked in his dreams by Freddy. And after getting introduced to the cast, we find Nancy's diary and read her thoughts about the ongoings of the first film, which is a pretty cool detail and way to connect the first and second film even further. We get some raunches as fuck scenes with the coach before his death. Jesse goes to the party for his hole, only to be Freddified ever so slowly, so he goes to Grady, the best bro and the bros of the movie, house to chill with his homeboy, or lover, depending on how some people thought the story was going to progress, before Freddy decides to pop out and get his biggest kill count of all the movies. Freddy gets defeated by the power of love. No, seriously. And it's not as bad as it sounds. The concept behind it is genuinely sweet, but we need more sequels, so obviously we get a ending. Overall, this movie poses some interesting ideas, raunchy as fuck scenes. For the serious, some neat death ideas, but other than the group kill and the coach, the other deaths are boring, and there could have been more. After all, this film had some great practical effects, especially with Freddy popping out of Jesse and the brain scene, but it's a shame we didn't get to see more. The cast was enjoyable enough, though not as strong as the first, with special props to Kim Mears. And maybe that's because of the horrible dialogue at times, but that's anyone guess. The music, whilst enjoyable at times, isn't really anything to write home about, only certain songs really. Overall, I'd give this a solid 7 out of 10. Following up, Freddy's Revenge is perhaps the best sequel of the series, made on a budget between 4.3 and 4.6 million is the estimation, and grossing in 44.8 million. It's fair to say that this movie was better received at a time compared to the sequel, getting stellar reviews for its amazing practical effects, which still hold up to a degree. The movie was directed by Chuck Russell, who made the remake of The Blob and went on to direct The Mask. Not a bad career, even if his direction is questionable at times in this film. Though he did direct The Scorpion King starring The Rock, so maybe I shouldn't be too surprised. West comes back to write the screenplay, and his touch to the film is greatly felt and appreciated. The film has the return of Heather Langenkamp, which is very welcome, even if at times it feels like she doesn't have too much to do. Robert Englund brings his A-game as always. The film stars Patricia Arquette, who starred in quite a bunch of late 80s and 90s films before going down the independent route. She is the sister of David Arquette, who plays Dewey in Craven's other notable series Scream, and also married to Nicolas Cage. Fair to say she's got quite the interesting life. Surprisingly enough, Lawrence Fishburne is in this movie before he found out he was plugged into the Matrix. I assume that this is Morpheus, but that's just a theory. A film. Yeah, we ain't gonna finish that stupid reference. This plot is perhaps the most interesting of them all, and it comes from the fact that it is better executed than the later films. We open with our new protagonist, with Christine being chased by Freddy in an awesome intro scene that leads her mother to believe she is self-harming, but it's Freddy. This leads to her being put into Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital, where she is placed under the care of a Dr. Gordon. Not you, but she fights back against getting put asleep as Nancy, makes a comeback to the story. We then meet the new cast of Killed Kids on the Block. Later, learning information about them, we get our first and probably best kill in the series as a whole, as Freddy takes Philip out like his much beloved puppets, pulling his strings off the roof of the hospital. Nancy sets up a way for them all to talk in their dreams, and that helps show off their dream powers. That was cool. On some are very outdated. Joey finds the nurse he fancies and plans on getting his hole before it shows it's Freddy, and the man goes on a tear, taking them down, with this is the prime time bitch being probably my second favourite kill. Nancy is included in the killing spree though, which is sad, but it did make for great shock entertainment, and it was a good closure for her. It ends with Freddy getting taken down by I'm a Dr. Gordon, not you from Saw, with Holy War. The nun that was in the film revealing that she is the mother of Freddy at the end with her grave, as she appears as a force of ghost? Question mark. Overall, this movie was a step up from its previous counterpart, and it took it in a great light with some of the best and most iconic kills and lines, had peak comedic Freddy, with Nancy's return being a lot of fun, a more well-rounded cast compared to the previous film and probably the original. It had some very interesting ideas that, whilst cool, the Dream Warriors could have been fleshed out more, but overall it did mostly capitalise on it. The soundtrack is not as interesting as others, though it does have some notable bangers. The directing is the best it's been so far. The ending scene, like most of them in this series, isn't that great, which is a shame, but overall it's still a solid runner-up, and I'd give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. This is the end of part 1 in the trilogy of these videos, so if you'd like to see more, please stick around for those videos. Best way to be notified is to like, subscribe and have the bell on. Just a side note, Freddy's Dead will not be in part 2 and will be replaced with New Nightmare, just because I want the last video to be a bit more special and I really want to clown on it with my mate. Bye!